clay. So I'm scoring. Okay, I scored the back of the nose, and I'm going to score right here because that's where it's going to go. I'm going to add my slip, just a little bit, and then I'm going to stick it on. Now I'm going to take my clay tool here, and I'm just going to kind of take off a little bit to help keep the craftsmanship nice. Okay. All right, now you can take your wooden tool and you can add 2 little dots for your nostrils. Just like that. Now we need to add the eyes. You want to take off about the size that you did for the nose, but maybe a little bit smaller. And then we're going to break that in half. So these 2 pieces, we want them to be about the same size. This one's a little bit bigger, so I'm going to take just a little bit of clay off. All right, perfect. Now I'm going to roll it. And just like we did with the nose, I'm going to kind of smash it into an oval or circle shape. See, that can go right there. And then the same thing over here. You want to, like I said, you always want to kind of check and make sure that they're about the same size. All right, so now we're going to score. Let's score this one. Okay, add our slip. And then attach the eyes. Just like that. And I'm going to try to move one down. It was a little bit higher than the other. If you want, some students have taken their wooden tool at this point and have added some little eyeballs. You can do that now, or you can just leave it without the eyeballs. Either way, I've made them both ways, and I think they both turn out nice for their own. You know, each one has its own pluses and minuses, so however you want to do it. Now it's time to make the ears. Okay, so we're coming back to our big chunk of clay, and we're going to take a couple little pieces off. And you kind of want to take this piece and you want to kind of squeeze it in your hands, and you want to make the top part pointed like a triangle, and then you kind of want to bring it down to the bottom point. I think I have a little bit of extra clay here, so I'm just going to take a little bit off. But you know, each one of you, your pigs are going to look a little bit different. So, you know, some of you might have bigger ears, some of you might have smaller ears, but you just kind of do what you think goes for your pig. So that's a good spot. I'm going to kind of push it on the table to make that flat edge. And then, remember, every single time you join 2 pieces of clay, you always, always, always have to score both pieces of clay and add your slip. If you forget to do that, what happens is once this clay dries, those pieces will fall off, unless you're really lucky. Sometimes they stay on, but most of the time they'll fall off. So that's why it's always so important. That's why I always tell you that you have to score and add slip every single time. All right, so there's one ear. I'm going to come back. Remember, you want to start at the tip, kind of make it into the triangle shape, and then kind of squeeze it so it's flat. Work your way down. You might want to take off a little bit as you go. Now, since I already have the first one made, I'm going to come back and I'm going to compare. Okay, well, if I put this guy over here, is that going to look like it matches? Is it too big? Is it too small? You kind of have to keep referring back to what you just made. Again, they don't have to be exactly perfect. That's what's fun about hand making your own things, is that, you know, it has a little bit of character. So I don't want you to stress that it's not perfect, but you still want to have nice craftsmanship in your artwork. That's important. So you want to kind of smooth the edges down, and you just want it to look neat. All right, let's see. That'll be pretty good. This ear might be a little bit bigger, but that's all right. I'm not too worried about it. All right, I'm going to kind of give myself that flat edge. And I'm going to score. Score over here. Add my slip. And then I'm attaching the ear. Now remember, you want to kind of smooth it so it looks like it hasn't even been joined. Okay, so it's kind of a little bit of a process, but you'll get the hang of it once you start to do it yourself. All right. You might see that as you're working, you might have some bumps or some scratches in your clay, so you can just kind of smooth it with your fingers, and that'll help kind of even some of that out if there's a section that you feel like you need to go back and fix. All right, so there is the face of my pig. Remember how I told you we need to go back and think about our slots for our money. Remember how I said sometimes it gets kind of closed as you're working? See, mine looks like it's kind of closed. So I'm going to come back here, put my fingers on either side, and I'm going to push it open. I want to make sure that that stays open as I work, because we don't want it to blow up in the kiln. All right, now we need to make the legs for our pig. So you want to think about the fact that you're going to need 4 legs. You want to have pieces of clay that are probably about that big. It really depends on how much clay you have and how big you want your legs to be. Some people like to make really long, skinny legs. Some people like to make short, fat legs. Some people like to make, really big legs, small legs. Now you want to make sure that your legs are going to support the weight of your pig. So you want to think about that as you're working. All right, so you're going to take these pieces of clay and you're going to kind of roll them in your hands back and forth like this, because we want them to be cylinders. But as you're doing that, I want you to take your fingers and kind of squish it back down, because we don't want it to be too long and skinny. We want them to be kind of solid little bases for our pigs. So I'm pushing it down and kind of rolling it in my hands. Kind of rolling and pushing and kind of going back and forth, because I want this to be a nice solid base for my pig. Okay. So now I'm going to do another one. Now as I'm working, I can already tell that this one's going to be way smaller than the one that I just made. So I can either add some more clay. This was a little bit of extra clay that I had from another part of my pig. So I can add some clay and see if that works. That's a little bit better. I could still probably use a little bit more clay. But again, remember, I've been telling you this whole time that it doesn't have to be exactly perfect, because that's what makes it interesting. All right. Okay, so I want them to be about the same size. 2 more. Once we're done with the legs, the only thing we have left is the tail. Now that's the trickiest part of this whole process, but it's also kind of one of the fun parts. All right. Now these 2 are kind of smaller, these 2 are kind of bigger, so maybe I'll put these as the back legs and these for the front legs. So you kind of take your pig and decide where you want him to go. It's going to be about like that. So I'm going to take my first leg, I'm going to score the bottom of my pig where I'm going to attach them, because remember, every single time you score your clay. Score the clay, and you add your slip. Oops, I wasn't watching what I was doing there. Okay, and now I'm going to attach. I'm going to kind of push it on. See, look, it's stuck. But I kind of want you to take your finger and carefully, you can see that I'm kind of carefully rubbing right where it meets. You definitely want to do this on at least maybe like 2 of the sides. Usually for this project, the areas that the kids really have a hard time on when they're drying, it's usually going to be a leg that ends up falling off before it gets to the kiln. So you really want to make sure that you've attached these the right way. All right, so I have one down. Okay, now it's time for the next one. Kind of want to look, figure out where you want to attach it. I'm going to score my clay. Score both pieces. Rudy, stop. Sorry. We're just going to town on his rawhide here. All right. And then we're going to attach it. And then with my fingers, I'm carefully smoothing those legs. Very carefully smoothing the legs. All right. Almost done. Now I gotta do the back legs. Carefully smoothing. I'm actually kind of using the back of my thumbnail. That seems to really work because it kind of makes a nice, kind of catches the clay, but it kind of pulls the clay around. So it kind of makes a nice smooth transition for it. But you might find a different way that works for you. That's okay. Just do whatever seems to be the best way for you to attach it. All right, and then the last one, I'll put that one right about here. I'm scoring the clay, adding my slip. All right. Smoothing one last time. All the way around. Okay, here we go. Now, the very last spot, oh, take a look. It's closed again on me. So I gotta open it back up. All right, so the very last step for our pig is that we need to add a tail. Now this part can get kind of tricky. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to think about how you want your tail to be kind of a long and skinny part of your project. So you're going to take just a little tiny piece of clay. You're going to kind of roll it in your hands like this. And then I want you to roll it on your desk to make a coil. Now this is kind of tricky because you don't want it to be too thick and clunky, but you don't want it to be too thin because sometimes when it gets to be too thin, it creates a problem because it breaks off really easily. It's really fragile. So you have to be really careful when you get your pigs back out of the kiln that you don't bump their tails because usually we have a few tail casualties because they're really fragile. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. If you make them too skinny and long, then they're going to be really, really fragile. Okay, so we're going to use our wooden stick And after you have a coil, it's probably about the thickness of my stick, maybe